Good evening. You're listening to the Two Extreme Horror Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you from the Pinehurst Palace. I'm inside in the secret lair of the Indian Hills Studios just west of Orlando, Florida. It's a dark and gloomy 87 balmy degrees here in Central Florida tonight. It's a great night to go shopping to a mall, except for I have a bunch of zombies outside. And that brings us to the movie that RDV from the Great Midwest and I are going to be covering tonight. And that's the second film in the George Romero series of zombies, and that's Dawn of the Dead. Good evening, RDV. How are you?
I'm feeling dead tired right now, bro.
Yeah, maybe you need some adrenochrome there to kind of not be a zombie anymore, but we're not going to go down that conspiracy rabbit hole. Yeah, so tonight's film, Dawn of the Dead, it came out in 1978, George Romero. We had talked about and actually did a commentary on, because it's free on YouTube, and it's also, I believe, in public domain, of Night of the Living Dead from, I think, 1968, the black and white one, which is very creepy. It's a great original. It really is the standard bearer of zombie movies. I think most people would agree. Not that there's not one or two previous before, like White Zombie or a few others that people might reference if they're hardcore film fans, but for all zombie fans and Walking Dead fans and everybody that thinks of zombies, really it's this gentleman, George Romero. It's Night of the Living Dead. But the second film, even though it was 10 years later, Night of the Living Dead, a lot of it takes place in the mall. There's definitely some bigger themes here at work that one could argue that show up in here that actually set the tone for kind of looking at a dystopian type future that zombie movies eventually became, a little bit in the 80s, and then when they tried redoing them in the 90s and all that too. So let me ask you, what are your initial thoughts about this movie? It's set in the mall. It's actually a pretty long film. It's in color, unlike the first one, which is black and white. What do you feel about it?
Started watching it. I'm like, okay, it's moving kind of slow. We're kind of thrown into the middle of it. We're thrown into starting off in the newsroom scene. Everybody's kind of going around and they're trying to find lists of safe places, and those safe places keep getting crossed off. And you get this guy. Obviously, I don't know why he's clinging on to his job for his sanity. He's basically just trying to get everybody to do their jobs. And he's like, I'm thinking at this point I'd be evacuating. I'd be getting out of there. And
Right.
that's what eventually everybody started doing, including the news reporter. Our guest, I don't know if she was a reporter or what, but she worked at the station, and her boyfriend who flew a helicopter. They decided, we're going to take off and get out of here.
We're going to steal it.
Pretty much.
Yep.
Then it cuts to this building where the SWAT team's going in, and we get this awesome scene with a shootout, and they just kill people with shotguns.
Yeah.
And they're going in. So apparently they're running in this low-income building where a bunch of basically black people live. And we get this freaking racist SWAT guy out of nowhere. I was like, okay, wow, this is going kind of hardcore. I don't know if he's always been a racist or if he's just a dick because the situation, he's upset, he just wants to get out of there, but he's deal with this crap. But he just starts going in there. He just starts shooting people. He don't care whether they have a gun or not. He doesn't care. Where he actually takes another two SWAT guys, basically go in and just basically kill him.
Yeah, and let's talk about that just in general, because that kind of leads up to one of the different things I was thinking about with this film. I mean, with the first movie, I've talked about how at the time it was pretty cutting edge, having a black person in a lead role. That was not a commonplace experience there too. And it's one of those situations where you go, okay, it was great for its time. It's still an effective movie. It was low budget. This one here is definitely more modernized. You're in the late 70s. This is the boom of shopping malls, which are a dying industry, as it were, today. They're definitely getting re-imaged, especially now in terms of COVID. You're going to get re-imaging of these malls. And once great franchises that used to exist, like JCPenney's and Sears and all, have gone by the wayside. And so there's a certain cynicalness about malls. And one of the things we talk about with pure science fiction is that we talk about like a science idea that actually affects the human condition in some particular way. And I've argued that a lot of stuff that masquerades as science fiction really isn't, because they're not really focusing on the science. And they're trying to make it more mainstream so you don't have to do it. And that's Hollywood for you. And there's nothing wrong with that. In here, much like horror movies or science fiction films, this is supposed to be a horror movie, but a lot of times in horror films and sometimes in science fiction, because you're dealing with a human element, there's usually a social aspect to it. And one of the things about George Romero is, in the few interviews I've heard him talk about some of these films, is he definitely puts a very social, intentional aspect to it. And you brought up this raid that's, the SWAT team goes in, and you get this guy, and he's obviously racist. He just starts, like you say, blowing the crap out of people, and it's gory, it's violent, it's disgusting. But I guess the idea here is, are we supposed to be more scared of the zombies, or more scared of just the fact that this situation has revealed somebody that's just so disgusting in terms of human nature? I mean, this is an intentional thing that he put in this film.
Yeah. And most people say, like, whoa, they got a guy killing black people. Oh, it's woke. There shouldn't be killing black people, blah, blah, blah. No, I think the reason he put it in there because these people exist. They're white bigots, black bigots, all this stuff in there. And like I said, this is a horrible situation. This is like the end of the world. The end of the day, it's people are panicking. There's gonna be assholes like this. It doesn't matter who you are. It kind of makes you think. Okay, well, the zombies, they only know one thing. They just they just want to eat brains. People, they're worse than zombies. They can think. They're the humans are the deadliest predators on the planet. We're capable of thought, conscious, can do stuff. We can choose not to kill if we want to. We can choose when to kill. Most animals just choose when they're hungry. We can just choose. We can kill for sport.
Well, and the other thing too is that when you look at like this situation here, I'm not looking like, oh, he's killing a bunch of blacks or a bunch of Hispanics or whatever. What it is they're a government. I could argue the contrary and say, hey, they're a government agency taking advantage of poor people, because that's really what there is. I think they're like some sort of tenement, some sort of Section 8 housing. So you can argue that it's kind of a section of class, and whereas Romero might have on screen visually presented as white versus non-whites. I mean, if you really argue it, especially if you're looking at the mall and consumerism on being popular, and especially how bad the economy was in the 70s, getting off of the gold standard, we had the value of the dollar really drop. You had prices skyrocketing, massive unemployment. Yep. That's what eventually led to getting Reagan in the 80s. And whether people agree with who they liked in the 70s and 80s, that's the reality of the situation, is that malls were seen as this oasis for rich people to go to. And so even though here you have a white guy killing low income people, and of course non-whites, they end up at a mall. And here's the thing: you've got the couple. I don't remember if they were married or not, but I believe she's pregnant. And then you got these two SWAT dudes. So there's three guys and a girl, which automatically I think of bad trouble. I don't, whether she's pregnant or not, you're going, hey, she's a female, and you got three males. Something bad's going to happen. You know what I mean? I admit, when we came across one of the very first guys in there, the SWAT guys, the big dude, the big black guy, played by Peter Washington. Or no, Kevin Forey, sorry, playing Peter Washington. The dude's tall. Yeah. And he's just in there. He had no remorse. Him too. He was going there. He was just taking out bad guys or zombies because he's in survival mode. He knows what's going on. He doesn't care about who you are, what your race are. If you're a threat to him, he's putting you down. And he ends up saving Trooper, also known as Roger DeMarco, Scott Ranger's character, the other SWAT guy. Mm-hmm. Saved him. So not necessarily a bad guy.
No. He's a good guy. Like you said, he just comes off. He's very intimidating. Because he's silent. He doesn't talk. He just walks in, with the shotgun, and just starts shooting people. When I say it's people, I mean he's shooting zombies. And those two, they realize after basically going into the basement, they meet this priest. This priest, he's got one leg. I noticed that's cool. I was like, wow. I wonder if there's any symbolism to that. He's just sitting there. He's just got one leg. He's on a crutch, And he talks about basically like, oh, these are, there's people in here they're not dead. They're just sick. And I'm getting into that whole mindset. Okay, there's going to be fanatics like this. There's going to be like, well, we can't put them down because they're just sick. They don't know. And then you find out that they're feeding them. Yeah. They were. So was this priest throwing actual live people in, or was he killing people and throwing them in? What was going on? Because that was the question I had. I think it was intentional on Romero's part, and I'm going to hazard a guess and say, just by the way it was presented, that he's obviously anti-religion. You don't have necessarily a lot of people that in Hollywood, in say the modern age, that you can say are very religious necessarily, or at least mainstream ones like this. And I think this is his way of kind of actually poking fun at religion, going, see, look what kind of crazy people religious nuts are. They end up doing really crazy stuff, and if things get really bad, they get even crazier. Because you're right, that's kind of disturbing. And you can sit there, like you said at the beginning of our stream here, that
people will be even worse than zombies. And this is just George Romero's way of pointing out that, of poking fun at like, okay, religion is bad, white people, act entitled or bad. I mean, it's like, okay, I get your point, but I don't think it's so in your face. Like today, it would seem like it'd be very in your face because of the way culture is these days. But back in the 70s, this was kind of like, what the hell is going on?
I know.
Would have been priests really been presented in a negative manner? Not often.
So this really hit home to people back then, especially this is late 70s, people are, this is during the Carter, presidency. So a lot of people were poor, especially in the movie. That's why they did that way, because they built all these low-income houses and all that crap. So after they clear out the basements off, these two guys decided to basically meet up with the girl and her. I believe they were married, or were they married? No, they weren't married. They're engaged, but she was, So
another commentary on the nuclear family. Marital sex, let's say.
Yeah. So anyway, so they get up, they decide to get in a helicopter. First, and then first they stop at over by the police station, like us, or get some supplies, whatever. So then they're flying. They're like, she's like, well, why don't we just go to Canada? And he's like, dude, I don't hardly have any gas.
Right.
So they end up stopping at this airport, and while Trooper is filling up the thing, he's not really paying attention. The other guy, what's his name again? Peter Washington, the character, the big
intimidating guy.
Yeah, SWAT guy. He goes over into the shop. He finds out there's actually people inside there. He finds out there's kids in there, actually. Kids are... so this is another thing. We're getting zombie kids. This is the first. It's the first I know. I've never watched any of the movies before this. The zombie movies, I actually had kids that were zombies. So that was kind of like intimidating. And you could see it kind of really ticked him off, but he was kind of shocked at first.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's going on. You got the girl and you got the other guy, Flyboy Andrews. Is it called? Yeah,
women love pilots. We know this.
Yeah. they're looking through this barn. I'm like, that's the worst place to go. And I'm thinking, like, I got flashbacks to Twister, where they walk in the shed with all the sharp objects. Like, that's where you don't want to be during Twister. Well, this is where you don't want to be during a zombie thing, because it's so dark in there you can't see. You could have a rotten floorboard. You get stuck in there. Get overran. I'm like, all the things that popped in my head. And George Romero did this on purpose. It's a creepy barn, So of course they do come across a zombie, and he's still kind of afraid to kill it, and so is she. But eventually he actually actually kills it by beating it to death. And then I think do you have a hatchet? I can't remember if he had a hatchet or a bat, but he ended up killing it. Well, and then they turn around and after they do this in the field, they see Roger's filling up the helicopter. Here comes a zombie walking towards him. And what is it? What was really interesting? I was like, why is the freaking helicopter running when you're trying to fuel it? Doesn't that just waste of gas?
But I don't know if they needed on to pump it in. It doesn't make sense. I don't know.
Yeah, and isn't there an emergency shut off that it shuts itself off and will let you fill it? Open the gas cap if it's running. But anyway, while he's doing this, he can't hear because the helicopter's so freaking loud. Here comes a zombie come up, and they're like, Trooper, and he finally turns around. He sees the zombie. The zombie climbs up at the bale hay and gets his head chopped off, pretty much clean in half. I was like, what dumb luck is that? But I'm surprised the blades didn't get messed up too. Fence.
Yeah, well, I think this movie's, everyone remembers this. Who's watched it remembers.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a bunch of people trapped in a mall because they end up, it's in actually one of the nicer malls, I think, in Pittsburgh area where they filmed it. But it's interesting because it's one of the first times that I can recall seeing a modern mall at the time on screen. And while malls were starting to pop up in some of your bigger areas, they were not prevalent around the United States too much. So for that to happen was kind of interesting because it makes it feel like it's happening right here and now. And since this is the same universe as the first film, it's just I guess a few weeks later or whatnot. Actually, a little bit more time passes by. And what's interesting to me is they're in survival mode, like you say. They're like, okay, we're going to block the doors off. We're going to do whatever. So what the hell's left to do? Party. And that's pretty much what they do. They kind of go to all the different places in the mall, which is neat. And, they kind of just they're bumming around. They don't have a game plan where they're
Yep.
going to go. They don't have a vision or something that's driving them to go forward. And this is where I thought, wow, the way Romero's, kind of commenting on religion, family. I'm saying that because of the priest, because of them, she being pregnant, and as a couple, they're not married yet, so. Technically it's a single mom kind of sort of situation. This guy being kind of crazy, the whole class thing with going into the Section 8 housing and just whacking people, even though it may be the right thing to do and you save somebody. How do you feel about this guy? Plus, like I said, 3 guys and a girl, and you're all trapped alone. And it's like, so to me, I was kind of interesting what's happened, but to me, it's really more about how they deal with the situation, and it's not a happy ending of the film, which I agree with. But eventually, after going through all that kind of nonsense there too, the external agent ends up being this biker gang, not necessarily the zombies, and it's pretty much how they deal with this before the movie ends. So, what would you like to say about that?
Well, as far as I want to go back to the whole entire movie, and talk a little bit about the zombies a little bit too. The zombies, you notice that a lot of them were like, so this is like they're not decayed yet, so. But a lot, they're all basically they're all painted blue. So that I'm like, okay, they must be running on a really low budget because the only zombie we ever got that actually looked like a zombie was Trooper. After he got bit and turned, they must have spent most of their budget and on just doing his face stuff. And then the other one was the exploding heads and when he shot the guy in the tenant building.
Right.
So and then people getting split in the head, with the knife. So like I said. When there's gore, and they do it right. But other than that, the zombies were kind of like. And there's another thing I think I don't understand too, because before this, I don't maybe as far as zombies being attracted to sound, maybe that was changed later for other things. But then in the mall, when you go to the mall, why would you turn on the music and all that stuff? I mean, obviously they probably didn't know. And they're like, well, the zombies won't leave. I'm like, well, that's because you have the music on. He's like, and I love how he says, like, well, maybe they're just, coming here because that's what they're used to. They're programmed. That's the last thing. The other thing I noticed too in this movie is that some of them actually just showed cognitive responses as far as turning doorknobs.
Yeah.
That was now that's freaky. If they're able to turn a doorknob. I don't know if continuing on. I would love to see, in the series, if that's actually holds up. If they're actually able to do that, even after it's been like a month or two after they've been decayed. Do they still know how to do that? And my thing is, would they even have the physical strength to do it at all?
Yeah, it's probably just a mass thing, if you're leaning on an angle. But yeah, it's one of the things where, again, we're not focused on the zombies so much, even though I think they're presented pretty well, like you say, despite most of them being blue. I was a little disappointed here at the ending with the biker gang. Not so much that they were bad.
That was funny though.
It was kind of neat. But I think the real ending is just not the biker fight that they have. It's the whole bad dude. And here's the thing. When she's pregnant, she wants to leave. But part of me was thinking, I don't know if it was intentional, but what theme I put onto it watching it was that, it's mother's instinct about survival, and that's one of the strongest forces on the planet. And so you can tell that she was pulling, about saying going to Canada or we need to get out of here and all that. Now that paradise has been destroyed, but when she gets when her boyfriend, husband, whatever you want to call it, her partner gives her a little bit of flying lessons, I'm going, okay, he's dead. It's just a question of when, which he does die.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but the best scene here is when the enraged, intimidating dude's kind of like trapped, and he's probably gonna die.
Well,
and he's just kind of standing around figuring out what the hell to do. But then I guess he just sort of realizes, hey, I got a pregnant white woman up there that I go run off with. Let me go figure that out. And then he hands it to the roof with her, and they take off, and that's the end of the movie.
Now that was funny because I'm like thinking, like, is he gonna stay there and die? To the last breath. At the last minute, she's getting ready to take off, and then she sees him. She could have took off, but she actually, he lucked out that she was actually a nice person. Because most people are just like fight or flight.
She needed a daddy. That's true.
But did you know that the alternative ending was basically that, with Peter and Francine, Peter being,
intimidating guy.
Yeah, intimidating guy, and Francine, the girl. They're gonna go on the helicopter, But the alternative basically was that they basically were going to kill themselves. Peter by shooting himself in the head, and Fran by sticking her head into the path of the rotating main helicopter blades. And then which would in the ending credits would have run over a shot of the helicopter blades turning until the engine winds up, implying that they would have not gone far if they chose to escape.
Yeah.
And that, I don't know, I kind of like that ending.
I don't.
Because remember, she was wasting all that fuel flying around. So was he when they were moving the trucks.
Yeah, I just think to me it goes back to that whole female instinct that urge to survive no matter what, especially when you have a child. And I think that's just a theme that doesn't get explored a lot in films. And so in a disaster horror kind of film like this, I kind of actually found myself getting attached to that, thinking it was kind of neat. So for her to just die that graphically, nah.
Yeah, so because they chose in the middle of that, they said we're not going to do that. They changed the ending.
Yep.
Her headpiece, where basically explode, was used for that guy in the beginning.
Yep.
They used the shotgun, so they still used it, But yeah, like I said, this at first I hated her, and when the guy's watching TV, he's like, it's not good. There's nothing going on. I'm like, just let the guy be. He's already snapped. You can piss him off. He's just gonna kill you. But Trooper got annoying though. When he's hot one of the cars, I'm thinking like, dude, you're surrounded by zombies. Well, they can't do anything. He got too cocky.
Yeah, cocky is the perfect word. Yep.
And it just pissed me off. I was like, dude, I knew he was not gonna make it.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I think it's a very good film. It's still, even though it seems a little dated, I think watching it is definitely rewatchable. I think there's some interesting ways that you can look at it, whether it's just kind of more action oriented. And like you say, it depends on whether you're watching, his cut or the different cut that Dario Argento did.
I can't remember if I saw this correctly or not, but when he dropped the tools, he's gonna go climb from his truck to the other truck. And the girl's up there, and she fires with the rifle. She fires a shot. I'm pretty sure she hits him in the leg. She shot him.
I don't recall.
She was firing a gun, and I'll rifle like, I'm gonna help you, and yeah, basically. So he ends up getting bitten, in the leg and in the arm. So I'm thinking, and then later on we see it. Because this happened to him, he got the best seat in the mall. He's in the little scooter cart that you were usually using for carrying stuff.
Yep.
So then we get to the car scene in the mall. It's a little Nissan or Honda. I can't remember what it was, but it was like, they're like, well, we're making a flip. I'm like, why don't we just drive?
Right.
Because they had to secure the gates and stuff like that. And I'm thinking, well, they were smart to park the trucks in front of there. The only problem is that they left the walkers. The walkers tapping on glass draws more walkers and all that stuff. I call them walkers because of Walking Dead, but they're zombies. But then again, I don't know. Walking Dead has different zombie rules, and so this movie has its own set of rules. So it's hard to compare them because I kind of like the Walking Dead. The rules, it makes more sense to me, more logical. Where these is like, maybe I'm not saying I'm giving these people a benefit out. They didn't realize that noise attracted the zombies. But then if you knew that, you wouldn't have turned the music on.
Well, I think, like I say, this movie's kind of one of the standard bearers for what's to come, and of course, any of the zombie stuff afterward had 10 to 20 years worth of finalizing how they wanted to go about doing things. So, yeah, I agree with you. It might make more sense now, but I think this is really a social movie. Not, yes, it's presented as a horror movie, but it's a social movie.
It's more like this is more presented like, hey, end of the world. You're able to do what you want to do. Where are you gonna go? Go to the shopping street, a mall. You're gonna live there. There's a grocery store and everything. It's like, baby, everyone who's a survival, is like, yeah, that's probably the best way, And this movie, it basically encouraged people for doomsday stuff, the prep.
Oh, sure, absolutely. Especially everyone at a mall. I mean, and of course, what better commentary than middle class white America than talking about malls?
Right. The only thing is that I think the deadbolts would have gave away after a while, though, on those doors. Get enough people, zombies pressing on it, though.
I don't really know, and don't really care. It's one of those things where it's like, after watching it again, recently, I'm like, yeah, this is definitely more of like I say, a social commentary than just a typical horror movie.
Like I said, when I think of this place now, I think whether the zombies would have came across good sound, these people pretty much screw themselves over thinking they're the only ones still alive by flying a helicopter around, firing guns that draws people.
Yep.
I mean, that's one of the things I'm like, if you're trying to hide out, I'd be more afraid of people coming at me than I would be a zombie. So I would never be firing guns unless those are the last resort.
Well, it definitely updates, the whole zombie franchise as well as the first movie.
Definitely.
Any last thoughts about the film or the series, 2 films in so far?
It's actually, I like this better than the first one only because it's a mall scene. If they would have been in a hole, they held up in a mall, I don't think it would have been that great of a movie. I think the mall really helps because they're doing fancy dining, and then they're watching TV. They get all this extra rations and stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's what made the movie good, not the zombies. It was actually the mall scene. What would you do if you were able to do whatever you wanted to do? That's what you did. It was one of those fantasy things. Like what would you do? Questions. So I don't really. You could say it's a zombie movie, but I don't really look at it much as a zombie movie because the zombies didn't do much in here. There was a few zombies that that were almost close kills. When you got Flyboy Andrews when he was in the freaking boiler room, firing multiple shots. By all rights, he should have been dead. All the ricocheting bullets. Not only that, he could cause the pipe to be damaged, or cause them to lose power. Idiots. So yeah, I was hoping for him to get shot by his own bullet. I was like, is he going to
that would border on a bit of absurdity, and I think they definitely wanted to keep this kind of a horror thing. And like all the technical stuff like that's not something we would see until the remake or re-envisioning of this in 2004, which we'll talk about in the future.
It does make sense. If you're up northern where it gets colder, they're going to have some kind of heating options. Versus anything that's down south where you don't really get that cold, you don't really need a furnace.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's absolutely true, especially here in Central Florida.
Yeah.
All right. The only thing I'd add to it for my final thoughts is that, I think the music's really, really good too. Goblin, who was with Dario Argento in a lot of his films, Italian's got a little bit of a different thing to it. I think the mix of that with an American type film works. It brings a little bit of that Italian type of horror element into it. And I think that kind of is a little bit offsetting with the way you would normally view a zombie movie. So kudos to the music in here as well. I think it's pretty neat.
Oh, here's a kill real quickly. The budget was $1.5 million and the box office $66 million in return.
Smash hit, bro.
Right, dude?
All right, RDV, thanks for showing up tonight as we covered the second film again in the George Romero, I won't even want to say trilogy because there's been so many of them, but zombie films, and it's Dawn of the Dead, or Dawn of the Living Dead as some people refer to it, but Dawn of the Dead in the Mall, 1978. Go see it. It's a must-see film. It's got a lot of social commentary. It's a great horror film. It's a film you can look at in a lot of different ways. It's not just crap. It's not B-level garbage. It's extremely solid and definitely even viable today, some 30 plus years, 40 plus years actually since it came out. Great film.
Go see this movie.
Yeah, I'd like to thanks for you for showing up, guys, and for everybody else listening too. Appreciate you sharing and getting the word out on the Xtreme Movie Show, specifically tonight's episode, the 2 Xtreme Horror Show, as it's the Halloween season. For myself and everybody here at the Xtreme Movie Show, good night.
And stay extreme.